All right, Brad, really big news today, after
Huge
what
news.
seems like what seems like 100 false starts. We actually have a Department of Justice memo outlining Schedule 3. So it's here. And given your expertise and how closely you've been monitoring all this, I've got a few questions for you, and I think the whole world has a lot of questions. You know, where I want to start, for you and I is, you know, I guess, 280E, it's going away. Where do you think the majority of these operators are going to spend their money? And a follow up is, this is opening the door for tons of institutional capital, which is going to turn cannabis into a commodity. How do people avoid that trap?
Yeah, I think not I think, here's what I know. I know that the current rule that Blanche just signed said that it's just for medical, right? So
Right.
anybody holding a medical license for a Schedule 3 controlled substance that can grow in that is now going to have IRS tax relief against the 280E tax code, which means that's going to put 30 to 40% more cash flow back into their operations. It doesn't change adult use, right? So if you're still just doing adult use, just a rec market, it doesn't apply to you, right? So I think what I know is that people are going to be rushing out to get medical licenses that don't have them because everybody's going to want the tax incentive. Right now, this alone, mark my words, this alone in a mixed market imploded the adult use market. Imploded it. Because why are you going to continue to run a business without a medical thing and pay 50% more in taxes than your next door neighbor? So that's going to change. I mean, the real impact, I think we talked about this the last time we talked, was unintended consequences. The first unintended consequence of this is it just exploded the medical market. Think about you
And
and
I
your
think,
operation. I would think that your first phone call was to your attorney. Like, how do we get them? How do we get med? How do we start getting what is it? The blue metric tags instead of the yellow ones.
that that is the number one call that operators across the United States made. Because if you're getting 60% of your taxes back that you didn't have, you are beyond negligent to stay in the adult use market. And I think, you know, we're about to see a lot of calls towards the, or a lot of, hits on this government website. Because one of the things that was fascinating was there's a specific call out in the DOJ memo where it's like, look, start registering because we're going to expedite these medical these medical approvals. I think it said within 6 months. I mean, so they're at least prepared for the onslaught of people.
Let me clarify that. Let me clarify that because it's really important because we're talking about federal rulemaking here. The the rule said the thing that Blanche signed today said that if you apply in the next 60 days, your application will be reviewed within the next 6 months. So it's going to be a race on this 60-day window to get things in, which nicely aligns with what's the next thing that's going to happen in the process, Greg? The
Those
hearing.
hearing.
When's the hearing? In 60 days.
Yep.
So the other thing is, like, not playing conspiracy theorist, but being pragmatic here, is that if you think that Kim and George and all the other CEOs of the large MSOs didn't have a heads up on this and don't have DEA applications sitting there, you're delusional. We look at what Vireo has been doing. Vireo has been on this massive, massive spend and acquisition. They have been buying everything that wasn't nailed down, including Hawthorne. So now they control the supply chain as well. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So when I look at all that, like, these guys know it was coming. And so I think the other thing is that they're nimble and quick, and everybody else is going to have to be nimble and quick. Because I believe if you're past, in fact, I won't even say this. Here's what I know. If you are past that 60-day mark, it's going to take you a very, very long time. It will take you probably 18 months to get a license. And so, and while the memo also, I know it says, because I read it, says that you can operate under your state issued license legally until the DEA gets you there. You can continue to operate your business in the state. But the other interesting thing, and we're going to get there, and I imagine we're going to get to this in a minute, is that you can now apply for international export as a secondary license, right? It doesn't come with the first license, doesn't come with the DEA approved Schedule 3 intrastate commerce, but you now can apply and ship this stuff to other legal med markets. And what that's going to do, like, especially to the guys up north, is where they're exporting and the quality that we put out in the US, like the Canadians are getting ready to be hurting.
I I love that you went there. As you know, I just got back from ICBC Berlin. Easily the best show. I've been going over there for about 7 years. Easily the best show. It's almost like people knew something was coming down the pipes because there was more activity there, more deal flow. And I think one of the questions that we have to think about here is, look, these guys like Glasshouse aren't dummies. They've been building up extra capacity forever. They were waiting for this day. To your point, how much do you see the opportunity for exporting, state lines, international lines? How much opportunity do you see there, Brad? Do you see it as like a middle operator could get there, or is this really just for the
Yeah.
MF?
Yeah. I think anybody that has built a facility in the last 36 months that didn't have an eye on GMP as they were going forward, again, was out of their mind. They were delusional to think that they were going to get anywhere. I could tell you specifically, there's an operator on the outside of Boston that we know really well that built a GMP ready facility. They put a ton of money into it with an eye on export. And I can promise you that today these guys submitted an application for not only their med in Massachusetts, but for export because they built it. And so people that had the foresight to go in that direction and build their facilities out ready are going to be able to capitalize on those markets, especially if they're growing a high quality product. Look, there is, as well as I do, and as everybody that out there is willing to listen to this, our little podcast here, is that the best weed in the world is grown indoor in the United States by far. And that entering the market in Europe is just going to raise the bar for everything else that is over there. Like all of a sudden, instead, it's like, you and I have been to these things enough and to these events. What's the one thing you have everybody talk about? The one topic, whether you're in Amsterdam or Berlin, Paris, it doesn't matter. What does everyone want? Everybody wants Cali weed. Cali weed, Cali weed, Cali weed. Well, soon they're going to get 5 million square feet from Graham of Cali weed. That's another guy that guy set himself up like huge because he could supply all of California what he grows, but he didn't have California. That wasn't the prize. The prize was the export market.
I couldn't have said it better. I think I'll be kind to some of our Canadian neighbors over in Germany when I saw some of what was landing over there as medical cannabis. Woof. It's not great. And there's a reason why, over in Germany, you're seeing these social clubs starting to have some measure of success. For those who don't know, social clubs are their version of rec, very limited. But the weed quality is enough to sustain these clubs that can only have 500 members. And there's a reason. It's exactly why you're right, Brad, that the quality going over is about to change dramatically, which leads me to another point. You and I, me on the ground, we're very familiar with the middle operator, the guy who probably has one, maybe two facilities. Um, you know, Look, the baseline market here in the United States, it's about to get bigger and it's about to rise. Here's my suspicion. The middle of the road growers who can't consistently deliver fire are fucked. How do
Oh,
you,
yeah.
I mean, I
Look,
don't see them surviving.
no, I don't either. I think look, all of a sudden, if you can get the license, right? And I guarantee you, anything to do with DEA, drug export, like you're going to have the capital to do that, and everybody's going to be scratching for that. If you're already growing mids and you're not headed towards a quality market, you might find some export, but everybody else that's growing a high quality product is going to get out there first because it's going to roll over. People are going to have a choice. It's a capital market. They're going to look at it and say, you know what, this is better. I want to buy this. Can you send me 500 kilos of this? Right, and that's what people are going to want to buy. It's the same thing that happened in the United States. Why do we think that as soon as we are able to have the ability to ship product to Europe, that they're not going to want the same quality that we expect here? And if you're a middle operator, like we had this talk internally. It's all we're talking about is that it's not that if you grow mids that you're making benchmark pricing. It's now if you grow mids, you're lucky if you could sell it at all. So you're sitting on inventory that nobody wants to pick up. And then your last hope of making any money at all, and not even making any money, of turning some cash to refresh your reserves, right, is to take it to extract, right? So you take all this and run it through BHO because it's dried flower. You're going to have to, that's all your only option. And then you're going to take that and run extract and make 10 cents on the dollar, right? That's your only option. And then that whole thing eats itself pretty quick, right? So I'm like, if you are not focused on quality and you are not focused on smokability, then you are focused on the wrong thing unless you are growing specifically for extract and you have optimized and built your business around that. And you and I both know some extremely strong operators that are really good at that game, but that's the game that is their business plan. They have based their entire business of we are growing for extract. We are going after the extract market. We're going to be the number one in the game. We're going to keep our costs low. And we're like, we built for that. It's not a second thought. It's the thought, right? And so those operators, like, I get it. But anybody else that's wanting to ship smokable flower or smokable flower products, it better smoke or it ain't going to get sold.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too to think about is one of the things that people ask me about what's the difference between the US market and European is you'd be floored, and you know this, Brad, because you've been there. There is an entire world of brokers, and all they do is broker deals. And that is going to be fascinating to see the US adopt to, hey, we need an import into Germany. We need to import here or there. Like, there's going to be this new world of brokers who are going to look at the quality first and say, you know what, Greg, and these orders are not small, Brad. These orders are enormous orders of cannabis. So there's this world where
they are moving tons of product.
Yes,
literal tons.
Yes. And that is a new world for growers out here. And I'll tell you what, you only get one shot at a first impression. So when that day comes, when that broker comes knocking and you're ready, you better hope that you're prepared. Because if that quality sucks, if they get feedback from the pharmacy that, it was bad, the patients over there don't want it, you're never getting another bite at that apple. Which leads me into another topic, which is, when we look at 280E, Brad, and we look at what we can anticipate to be some loosening of the financial markets, there's a new type of person entering our field here. And that person is the guy who's going to decide whether or not to invest in you and whether or not to say, hey, Greg, I see your business plan. I see you want to go to Germany. You've got all these connections, but you know what? I need to see data. Give me your data. Whiteboards don't mean shit anymore, Brad. What are these investors going to be looking for, to be able to green light an expansion or a proposal to get over state lines or overseas?
I follow the investment community very close, right? And the conversations that I have with people that are starting to write checks is like, what do we need? What are we looking at as far as these black box cannabis operations that we're going into? I'm like, look, you need to be able to look at the outcomes that they have, and that's their COAs, what their weights were, where did they finish, what did they manage their dry cure well, all that like that, and be able to stitch that back to how they grew the product. Because you're going to be able to figure out really quick, do these operators actually know, are they better? Are they lucky or are they good? And in this, where we're getting ready to head, and and everybody, I say this all the time, Greg, is that luck runs out. Good does not. Good leads to great. And great's going to make money. But if you were rolling the dice and you were going to set in every room and like, I got it, it's going to be all right, you're going to have a failure. And if you have a failure in this export market or in the med market that's going to be regulated, like it's no different than in the adult use market. It's that people are going to walk into a dispo, say, I want some of this product. And the people behind the counter, the pharmacists, are going to look at that and say, no, you don't want that. That's not very good, right? We get a lot of complaints about that. You really want to go with this because it's going to be quality that drives that. I mean, absolutely. And brand name is going to matter. Huge. Like, you want to buy ibuprofen or you want to buy Advil? Right?
Do you
You want like, and we'll translate this back to a more secular market. Do you want to buy Sam Adams Summer Ale, or do you want to buy a black can that says beer?
Where did this weed come from?
Exactly. This entire movement and what we're at, and you just said it. Where did this weed come from? And consumers today in the market that we're in, organic, locally produced, rainforest alignment, grown with hipster tears, whatever, right? People want to know where the hell it came from. And so that being the traceability back to like, where was it grown? How was it grown? What did you do? People are going to start asking those questions, especially when we're talking medical. Like that traceability back to how you grew it, how it was grown, what you put on it, all the techniques that you used, how did you dry it, all that stuff that went along with it. Like people are going to pay attention.
I think the one thing that you've hammered home that I hope people take away from this is that with the Fed stepping in, it's finally happened. You are going to either get on this treadmill of professionalization and being ready for the market to move into where Canada, Germany, everyone else has been in terms of, I'm not talking quality. We just had that discussion. I'm talking about just the bullshit of data, traceability, GMP, all of that. Like there is a treadmill that you will either get on or you will fall off. And I think
Right.
the one thing, the last question I'd ask you, Brad, and I think this is a really good one to end on here is, some people might be looking at this, rightfully so, as saying, I'm finally going to get some extra cash back. I'm finally going to get some money. Where should they be putting that money, Brad? What makes the most sense for that investment?
I would, if I'm an operator and I don't have the ability to properly measure my operation, I'm going to put tools in place to be able to make sure I can measure. Period. I mean, you don't need an MBA from Stanford, Harvard, Yale, wherever to be able to go, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Right. And that goes back to, if you're not getting good data acquisition and understanding what is happening from the time you set the seed to the time that you put it in finished packaging, you put it in a Grove bag and get ready to ship it overseas. If you don't understand that whole process, you're guessing and you're going to fail. And at this business, at this level, especially when we start talking, like, you fail on a letter of credit on a ton of weed and it gets to where it's going and it doesn't pass the quality metrics, you just ate $2,000 a pound times 2,000 pounds.
Over.
Done.
Game over.
Like,
over.
You know what? Like, your money that you thought was moving, like when they, like the traceability, and like, we all know how international money moves. And it's not like you're just going to get a wire for $4 million and it just show up, right? It's all going to be structured banking. It's going to be like, okay, I'll get you a letter of credit. Like, we'll issue a certain amount when it clears the rail. We'll test quality metrics when it gets here. These are the following quality metrics that we expect. If it passes the quality metrics when it gets here and we test it and we all agree, then we're going to release the rest of the funds. And that's the way the bank is going to set up the motion. And that's how it'll work. It works that way in the coffee industry. It works that way in the food industry. Anything that's has to have a quality metric to it, the transaction is based on final mile quality, right? And as somebody who's worked in the coffee business for a really long time, I could tell you that, like, very carefully, we structure those letters of credit on when we move 20, 30, 50, 100, $2 million worth of coffee across international borders. You bet your ass I'm going to have it tied up in that, hey, look, this is going to, it cupped at this score before we shipped it. It better goddamn well be that way when I get here, or you're not getting paid. And it's going right back. And I'll pay the $100,000 it takes to send it back because I'm not taking it. So, that's it. It's going to be the same thing in this market.
Yeah, it's funny, Brad. I feel like today it's a day that we've all been pushing for. And, over my shoulder is an image of Humboldt County. I'm from Humboldt. It's the humble beginnings, and now there's going to be guys in Humboldt County who will have the opportunity to service Italy. Right? It's a big day, but
Yeah,
to
it
your
just
point,
opened up that entire market. Like those guys up there that were getting crushed. I'm like, all of a sudden, like California outdoor grown, like that's gonna play in Europe. So I'm super happy for everybody. I think everybody takes the time and like goes in and capitalizes on this market. We just introduced an entirely new economy into what we do here in this industry in the US. This is a once in a lifetime thing we're getting ready to do. So people, I'm looking at you. Go do your homework. Call your lawyers. Call your accountants today and figure this out and go take advantage of this moment that we have right now, because this is a one-shot deal. You get it right now and capitalize, or you know what? And especially if you're a mid-market small guy, or the big guys are going to go gobble this up. You can take that to the bank.
Perfect ending. I love hearing their story about the growers and that you're dealing with, Brad, who are already aware of it. They knew it was coming, and now it's time for everybody else to adjust. So with that, buddy, I will thank you as always. What a great conversation. 20 minutes flew by. I appreciate you, my man.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Always a pleasure.